Welcome to part 2D of our study on the Gospel of John, and we were talking about Christian worship during the early days of the movement. Took place first at the temple, and then in local synagogues, and then in house churches as more and more non-Jewish Christians began to join the movements. That's when you saw the rise of house churches. And we also remember that there was major issues and disputes in the local synagogues when worship was taking place there regarding the personhood and various beliefs and claims about Jesus. We talked about those things last week. What's John's claims about Jesus that got him and some of the other people kicked out of their local synagogue? Well, the first claim is that Jesus is the long-awaited Messiah, that he is the Son or agent of God. He is the atonement for sin, and he reveals the will of God. But we see some of the Jewish Christians and those who didn't profess to be Jewish Christians, but strictly adherents to the practice of Judaism, they weren't buying John's claims. These disputes caused great internal division and strife in Jewish communities. So Jewish communities were divided about Jesus. Some Jews believing Jesus was an upstart and a troublemaker and it was right for him to get killed. Others believing he is our long-awaited Messiah. This caused division among the Jewish people, but it also ultimately led to a split between Judaism and Christianity. And I've got to say this, before the split, though, we know, as I mentioned earlier, that people had been kicked out of their local synagogue because they kept pressing these claims about Jesus. And I've listed the citation in chapter 9, verses 12, chapter 9, chapter 12, and verse 16, 9:22, 12:42, and 16:2. Now let's take a look at some historical data, which is going to affirm my claim regarding the split between Judaism, the Jewish faith, and Christianity, faith in Jesus. Scenes from the book of Acts suggest that the Apostle Paul's preaching of his faith in Jesus alone, remember, that's what Paul preaches, and that's what's been handed down to us, that we must have saving faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And as we grow in our faith in Jesus, all of the other transformations that need to take place spiritually and otherwise will take place, but it's rooted and it begins with our faith in Jesus Christ, aka Paul's faith in Jesus alone doctrine. We know that Paul's form of the gospel, this faith alone in Jesus, served as a major driving force behind the eventual official separation between Judaism and Christianity. Jewish people at some point said, we ain't even messing with this. We ain't even going to try to mess with this. Matter of fact, we're cutting all ties with Jesus and Christianity. And that's how it is today, that we have still this split. Jewish people, by and large, don't believe in Jesus in the way that Christians do. And the faith or practice of Judaism and the practice of Christianity are two very separate and different practices. Where can we find this information about the preaching of Paul and how it led to the eventual separation between Judaism and Christianity? We find it in Acts chapter 13, 16 through 41, where Paul preaches that Jesus is the Messiah and that he is the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. Most Jews weren't buying it. Acts chapter 14, verses 3-7, where Paul and Barnabas spoke boldly in Iconium's Jewish synagogue, the synagogue in the city of Iconium, and his preaching caused many people to believe, and it also caused those who didn't believe to stir up major trouble. All right. Paul found himself on the run. Again, talking about how the Apostle Paul preaching helped contribute to the eventual split between Judaism and Christianity. Acts chapter 15, 7 through 11. Paul preaches about salvation by grace is available to all, whereas the traditional Jews believe that only Jewish people really could have the fullest relationship with God. All right. And that God in his mercy might allow some new non-Jewish people to practice the faith, but they were not seen the same as Jewish people. And Paul comes along talking about faith in Jesus Christ is universal. Anybody can believe, anybody can practice. Anybody who does believe in Jesus and practices the way, they are seen as receiving the grace of God and being acceptable to God. Doesn't matter whether they oh my goodness, I can't talk today. I'm sorry, y'all. Whether it be Greek, whether they be Jewish, it doesn't matter. Grace is available to all in Paul's preaching. This again contributed to the split. Jewish people wasn't messing with that. They could not embrace grace for everybody. And then also in Acts chapter 15, verses 13 to 21, where Paul preaches and Gentiles converts, begin to be converted to the movement, but it's established that the Gentile converts or the non-Jewish converts to the faith, that they do not have to practice circumcision. Because remember, this was a big issue with Christian Jewish people against Paul and some of the others. Christian Jewish people still believe, I don't care what we talk about Jesus, we're going to still have to observe the old Jewish traditions of following the Torah and all those laws, eating a kosher diet, circumcising our sons on the 8th day after their birth. Jewish Christians believed and practiced all of that, whereas Paul says, hey, I'm bringing hundreds of new converts into the faith who don't know nothing about Judaism, and I don't think it's right for us to try to make them practice this when we can't hardly practice it faithfully ourselves. And at a particular meeting they had in Jerusalem where James, the brother or cousin of Jesus, presided, it was established, Paul, you go and preach to the Gentiles and you can tell them they don't have to practice circumcision, but they need to abstain from sexual sin and they need to abstain from drinking blood of animals, that type of thing. But again, it's all Paul's preaching that's driving this separation. Again, we talk about Paul's preaching. Acts chapter 17, verses 22 through 35, Paul preaches the gospel in the Athenian culture that has no knowledge of the God of Judaism. So he had a fresh field, a fresh landscape. These people don't know nothing about Judaism at all. So this is his opportunity to preach his form of the gospels and exclude any of the items from the practices of Judaism. All right, we're going to stop there because I've had such a long day. And as you can hear, I've been stumbling through my words for a whole hour because I'm so tired. But I was anxious to make sure I got this video lesson recorded and posted for you. Continue to go to my website, www.wtfo.biz, which actually, if you're viewing it, you know you're probably viewing it from my website. There's some other material on the website as well. You're happy to stay there and walk around and look around for a while. Well, God bless you. I appreciate you joining me. Next week, we're going to review John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. So I want you to read that between now and next Wednesday and be prepared to discuss it. God bless you. I love you. Take care. Art B is out.